Every other Saturday morning for the past 7 years, I, Jack Harper, would wake up just before dawn in my modest two-bedroom house on the outskirts of Willow Creek, Ohio, a small town nestled along the winding shores of Miller's Lake. The house was old, built in the 1950s with creaky wooden floors and windows that rattled slightly when the wind picked up from the lake. I'd start my day with a pot of strong black coffee, brewed in the same old percolator that my late wife, Margaret, had bought for us back when we were newlyweds. Margaret had passed away 5 years ago, her heart giving out after years of quiet suffering. But that's a story for another time. For now, the routine was what kept me grounded. I'd sip that coffee slowly, staring out the kitchen window at the misty lake in the distance, where the water lapped gently against the rocky banks, and think about how life had a way of settling into patterns, even after the world had shattered around you. The drive to pick up my granddaughter, Lily, was always the highlight of those mornings. She was 8 years old now, with curly brown hair that she inherited from her mother, my daughter Emily, and bright green eyes that sparkled with a curiosity that reminded me so much of Emily as a child. Lily lived with her father, Mark, in a modest ranch-style house on Elm Street, right in the heart of town. Mark was Emily's husband, or widower, as everyone called him since that fateful day in 2018. I'd pull up in my old Ford pickup truck, the one with the faded blue paint and the dent on the passenger side from a minor fender bender years ago, and honk the horn lightly. Lily would come bounding out the door, her backpack slung over one shoulder, wearing whatever colorful outfit she'd picked out that day, usually something with unicorns or stars, her favorites. We'd head straight to the small playground behind Miller's Lake, a spot that had become our sacred ritual. The playground wasn't much, just a set of rusty swings, a slide that had seen better days, and a few benches scattered under the shade of ancient oak trees. But it was peaceful, away from the bustle of Main Street where my hardware store, Harper's Home and Supply, stood proudly on the corner. We'd park the truck near the gravel lot, and I'd hand Lily a few dollars for the ice cream truck that always showed up around 10 a.m. vanilla soft serve for me, plain and simple, the way I'd liked it since I was a boy growing up in this very town. For her, rainbow sherbet, swirled with vibrant colors that matched her energetic spirit. We'd sit on one of those benches, licking our cones, and talk about everything and nothing: school projects, her favorite cartoons, the fish she wanted to catch in the lake someday. This routine had started right after Emily's accident. It was back in the spring of 2018, a day that started like any other but ended in tragedy. Emily and Mark had taken their boat out on Miller's Lake for what was supposed to be a relaxing afternoon. Emily loved the water. She'd grown up swimming in that lake, learning to fish from me when she was no older than Lily is now. Mark had told the authorities, and me, that a sudden storm had whipped up, catching them off guard. Emily was checking the lines at the bow when a wave hit, flipping the boat. Mark said he searched for hours, but the currents were too strong. Her body was never recovered. The rescue teams dragged the lake for days, but nothing. Just an empty life jacket washing up on the shore a week later. The town mourned her. There was a memorial service at the local church, packed with friends and neighbors who'd known Emily since she was a girl. I stood there, numb, holding little Lily, who was just a toddler then, in my arms, trying to make sense of a world without my only child. After that, I promised myself I'd do whatever it took to support Mark and Lily. Mark was devastated, or so it seemed. He threw himself into work at the local construction firm, but raising a child alone was tough. So, every April, on the anniversary of Emily's birthday, I'd send him a check for $50,000. It came from the profits of my store. Harper's Home and Supply had been in the family for 3 generations, starting with my grandfather, who opened it in 1947 after the war. We sold everything from nails and hammers to paint and plumbing fixtures, serving the farmers, builders, and homeowners of Willow Creek. The store wasn't a gold mine, but it did well enough, especially during the spring renovation season. I'd work long hours, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. most days, stocking shelves, helping customers with their projects, ringing up sales on the old cash register that still made that satisfying ka-ching sound. The money for Mark was my way of honoring Emily's memory, ensuring Lily had a good life, clothes, education, maybe even a college fund someday. Mark always thanked me in his texts. Appreciate it, Jack. Lily's doing great. Short and to the point, but I figured grief made people that way. Lately, though, there were these small things that nagged at me, like pebbles in my shoe that I couldn't quite shake out. Mark's replies had grown even shorter over the past year. Sometimes just a thumbs-up emoji instead of words. And Lily, during our playground visits, seemed a bit more withdrawn. She'd laugh at my jokes, but her eyes would dart away sometimes, as if she was holding something back. I'd ask her about school and she'd say fine, but not elaborate like she used to. Once or twice, she'd mention something about her dad being busy with his friend. But when I'd probe, she'd change the subject. I chalked it up to her growing up, maybe the awkward phase of being 8, or perhaps the lingering shadow of losing her mother so young. Grief has a way of sneaking up on you, even years later. I'd feel it myself sometimes, standing in the store, helping a customer pick out fishing lures, and suddenly remember how Emily used to tag along with me on trips to the lake, her little hand in mine as we cast lines into the water. The store was my anchor through all of it. Harper's Home and Supply was more than a business. It was a piece of Willow Creek's history. The building itself was a sturdy brick structure with a green awning that I'd repainted myself last summer. Inside, the aisles were lined with shelves of tools, hardware, and supplies. Screws in every size, power drills humming in their boxes, rolls of wire and pipes stacked neatly. Regulars like old Mr. Thompson would come in every Tuesday for his gardening seeds, chatting about the weather or the latest town gossip. Mrs. Ellis from down the street always needed advice on fixing her leaky faucet, and I'd walk her through it step by step, sometimes even drawing diagrams on scrap paper. The work kept my mind busy, my hands occupied, and my heart from dwelling too much on the empty spaces in my life. Mornings at the store started early. I'd arrive at 6:30 a.m., unlock the heavy front door with the key that had been passed down from my father, and flip on the lights. The fluorescent bulbs would buzz to life, illuminating the displays I'd set up the night before. Maybe a special on lawnmowers or winter prep kits. I'd check the inventory, restock the popular items like duct tape and batteries, and brew another pot of coffee in the back room for the early birds. By 7 a.m., the first customers would trickle in. Contractors picking up supplies for the day's jobs, homeowners with weekend projects in mind. I'd greet them with a smile, ask about their families, and offer tips from my years of experience. Jack knows everything about fixing up a home, they'd say, and I'd laugh it off, but it felt good to be useful. Afternoons were busier, with kids coming in after school for bike parts or parents grabbing paint for a fresh coat in the living room. I'd hired a part-time helper, young Tim from the high school, to handle the register during peak hours so I could focus on the more complicated queries, like recommending the right insulation for a drafty attic or explaining how to wire a new light fixture safely. Tim was a good kid, reliable, but he didn't know the store like I did. Every nail, every bolt had a story, tied to the people who'd bought them over the years. Evenings, after closing at 7 p.m., I'd tally the day's sales, sweep the floors, and lock up, the key turning with a familiar click. Then it'd be back home to my quiet house, where I'd heat up a frozen dinner or make a simple sandwich, sit in front of the TV watching old westerns, and think about Emily. She'd been such a bright light, smart, kind, always helping at the store during summers. She met Mark in college, studying business while he was in engineering. They married young, had Lily, and seemed happy. The accident changed everything. I remembered the call from the sheriff's office, the voice on the other end delivering the news like a punch to the gut. "Mr. Harper, there's been an incident on the lake." Shaking off the memory, I'd often flip through old photo albums before bed. Pictures of Emily as a baby, her first bike ride, her wedding day with Mark smiling beside her. Lily featured in the newer ones, her growth charted in snapshots from our playground visits. Those Saturdays were my lifeline, a bridge to the past and a hope for the future. But even there, the subtle changes lingered. Last visit, Lily had barely touched her sherbet, pushing it around with her spoon instead of devouring it like usual. When I asked if something was wrong, she just shook her head and said, "Daddy's been busy. I didn't push. Kids have their moods." But as I drove her home that day, watching her in the rearview mirror staring out the window, A quiet unease settled in my chest, like the first distant rumble of thunder over Miller's Lake. Willow Creek itself was a town frozen in time, with its population hovering around 5,000 souls. Main Street was lined with shops like the diner where Margaret and I had our first date, the library where Emily spent hours as a teen, and the bait shop by the lake that supplied half the town's fishermen. The lake was the heart of it all, Miller's Lake, named after some long-forgotten settler, stretching 3 miles across with deep blue waters that turned stormy gray in bad weather. Boating was a way of life here. Families picnicked on the shores in summer, ice fished in winter. But after Emily's accident, I'd avoided it, the sight of boats bobbing on the water stirring up too many what-ifs. My days blended into one another, a comfortable rhythm punctuated by those Saturday outings. I think about Mark sometimes, how he managed alone, working long hours at the construction site on the edge of town. He'd remodeled their house a bit over the years, added a deck out back that he said was for Lily's play area. I admired his resilience, or at least I told myself I did. The annual checks were my contribution, a silent pact to keep Emily's legacy alive through her daughter. $50,000 wasn't pocket change. It meant cutting corners at the store, skipping vacations, but it was worth it, or so I believed. Yet, as the leaves began to turn that October, the air crisp with the promise of fall, those small cracks started to feel less like imagination and more like warnings. Lily's quietness, Mark's curt texts, the way he'd ask for the money earlier each year with excuses like school fees or medical bills. I'd always wired it without question, trusting family. But trust, I was beginning to realize, could be a fragile thing, like the thin ice on Miller's Lake in early winter. Solid at first glance, but liable to break under pressure. One particular Friday evening, as I closed up the store, Tim helped me count the till. "Mr. Harper, you okay? You seem distracted," he said, stacking quarters neatly. I waved it off. "Just thinking about tomorrow's visit with Lily." He nodded, but his eyes lingered a moment too long. That night, at home, I sat on the porch, the lake visible in the moonlight, and wondered if the routine was holding me together or just masking the voids. Little did I know the balance was about to tip, starting with a whisper on a playground bench the very next day. As the sun rose on that Saturday, I followed the familiar path: coffee, drive, pick up Lily. She climbed into the truck with a small smile, but her eyes seemed shadowed. We arrived at the playground, ordered our treats, and settled on the bench. The lake sparkled nearby, boats dotting the horizon. Everything felt normal, yet the air held a tension, like the calm before a storm. Lily licked her sherbet slowly, then set it down, her little hand reaching for my sleeve. And that's when the first real crack appeared, seamless and leading straight into what would unravel everything. One crisp October afternoon at the playground, Lily sat beside me on the bench, swinging her sneakers, then suddenly gripped my sleeve hard. "Grandpa Jack," she whispered, eyes darting toward the parking lot. "Please don't give Daddy any more money." Before I could ask why, she added, "Come to the house tomorrow after school. You'll see something." She wouldn't explain more. When I dropped her off, Mark was waiting on the porch, arms crossed. "You're late again," he said flatly, barely glancing at Lily as she hurried inside. I asked if everything was okay with her school project I'd helped pay for. He shrugged. "Kids are expensive. Any chance you could send next year's early?" Roof leak. It was October, payment wasn't due until April. Something in his tone felt colder than usual. That night I couldn't sleep, replaying Lily's frightened whisper. I had just finished telling her one of my old fishing stories, the one about the time I caught a bass so big it nearly pulled me into the water when I was 16, and she had given me the polite half-smile she reserved for stories she had heard a dozen times before. But then, without any warning, her small hand shot out and gripped my sleeve with surprising force for an 8-year-old. Her fingers dug in just enough that I felt the pressure through the flannel of my shirt, and when I looked down at her face, the playful sparkle in her green eyes had vanished, replaced by something much older and much more serious. "Grandpa Jack," she whispered, her voice so low it barely carried over the distant sound of children laughing on the swings and the soft lapping of the lake against the shore. "Please don't give Daddy any more money." The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. I blinked, my vanilla soft serve forgotten halfway to my mouth, and turned fully toward her. Lily's gaze was fixed not on me, but on the parking lot beyond the playground fence, where a couple of minivans sat idling and a man in a baseball cap was unloading a cooler from the trunk of his car. She leaned in closer, her curly hair brushing against my arm, and added even more quietly, "Come to the house tomorrow after school. You'll see something." Before I could form a single coherent question, before I could even process what she might mean by something, she pulled her hand away as if she had touched something hot. She hopped off the bench, wiped her sticky fingers on her jeans, and started walking toward the slide without another word. I sat there stunned, the cone dripping onto my knee, watching her small figure move away from me with a purposefulness that didn't belong to an 8-year-old. My mind raced through possibilities. Was she in trouble at school? Had Mark said something unkind? Was there money missing from her piggy bank? None of the explanations felt right. Lily had never been one to exaggerate or make up stories. If anything, she was too honest, the kind of child who would confess to breaking a cookie jar before anyone even noticed it was gone. The rest of our time at the playground passed in a strange, muted haze. Lily climbed the slide twice, swung on the swings for a few minutes, but her usual chatter was gone. She answered my questions with single words, "Yeah, okay, fine," and kept glancing toward the parking lot as if expecting someone to appear. When the ice cream truck's jingle finally faded into the distance and it was time to leave, she climbed into the passenger seat of my truck without protest, buckled herself in, and stared straight ahead through the windshield the entire drive back to Elm Street. I tried to fill the silence with light conversation, asking about her spelling test, whether she wanted to go fishing next weekend, if she had finished the book I gave her last month. But her responses were polite echoes, nothing more. When we pulled up to the modest ranch house with its neatly trimmed lawn and the new deck Mark had built 2 summers ago, he was already waiting on the front porch. He stood with his arms crossed over his chest, wearing the same gray hoodie he always wore on weekends, the one with the construction company logo faded almost to nothing on the sleeve. His posture was stiff, impatient, as though he had been counting the seconds until we arrived. Lily got out of the truck quickly, head down, and hurried past him toward the front door without saying goodbye to me. That alone set off alarm bells. Normally she would run back for one more hug, or at least wave from the steps. "You're late again," Mark said flatly as I stepped out of the truck and closed the door behind me. His voice carried no warmth, no trace of the easy camaraderie we used to share when Emily was alive. Back when he would slap me on the back after a football game on TV or ask my advice about fixing the garage door. Now it was just flat, factual, like he was stating the weather. Traffic was heavier than usual coming around the lake. I lied, because there hadn't been any traffic at all. I had simply lingered a few extra minutes at the playground, hoping Lily might say more. I walked up the short concrete path to the porch steps and stopped a respectful distance away. "Everything all right with Lily's school project? The one on the local history of Willow Creek. I sent the poster board and markers last week." Mark shrugged, his eyes sliding past me toward the street as if he were already thinking about something else. "She's fine. Kids are expensive, you know how it is." He paused, then added almost casually, "Any chance you could send next year's payment early? Got a roof leak in the back bedroom. Insurance won't cover it unless it's declared a total loss, and I'd rather fix it now than wait for winter." I felt something tighten in my chest. It was October. The annual check wasn't due until April, Emily's birthday month, the way I had always timed it, so the money felt like a gift from her rather than charity from me. Asking for it 6 months early wasn't unheard of. He had done it once or twice before with plausible excuses. Car repairs after a fender bender, braces for Lily when she was 6, but something about the way he said it this time felt different. Colder. More entitled. Like he expected it rather than asked. "I can look at the roof if you want," I offered, trying to keep my tone even. "I've got some spare shingles in the store, and I know how to patch a leak without tearing the whole thing apart." Mark shook his head quickly. Too quickly. "No need. I've got a guy coming next week. Just thought, family helps family." He finally met my eyes, but the look was brief, almost challenging, before he glanced away again. "Lily's got homework. Better get inside." He turned toward the door without waiting for my response. Lily was already visible through the living room window, sitting at the dining table with her backpack still on, staring down at an open notebook as if the page held the secrets of the universe. She didn't look up when Mark opened the door and ushered her fully inside. The door closed behind them with a soft but definitive click. I stood there on the sidewalk for a long moment, hands in my pockets, staring at the closed front door as if it might open again and explain everything. The October air was cool against my face, carrying the faint scent of burning leaves from someone's backyard a few streets over. My mind replayed Lily's whisper over and over. "Please don't give Daddy any more money. Come to the house tomorrow after school. You'll see something." What could she possibly want me to see? A stack of unpaid bills? A bruise she was afraid to show anyone? Or something worse, something that would explain why her laughter had grown quieter, why her eyes avoided mine when she talked about home. I got back into the truck, started the engine, and drove the familiar route home along the lake road, past the bait shop that still had the same hand-painted sign from when Emily was a teenager, past the picnic areas where we used to barbecue on summer evenings. The water looked calm now, silver in the late afternoon light, but I couldn't help remembering how quickly it had turned angry the day Emily disappeared. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark bedroom, listening to the house settle, the creak of floorboards cooling after the day's warmth, the distant hoot of an owl near the lake, the occasional car passing on the county road. My mind kept circling back to Lily's grip on my sleeve, the fear in her whisper, the way Mark had stood on that porch like a man guarding a secret. I got up twice, made tea I didn't drink, paced the living room in my socks, stared at the framed photo of Emily on the mantel, her wedding day smile, so full of hope, and felt the unease grow into something sharper, something that refused to be dismissed as imagination or overprotectiveness. By morning, the decision was made. I would go to the house tomorrow after school, just as Lily asked. I would knock on the door, look Mark in the eye, and ask, calmly, reasonably, what was going on. If there was nothing, fine, I would apologize for intruding. But if there was something, if Lily's whisper turned out to be the first thread of a larger unraveling, then I would follow it, no matter where it led. The next day dragged. I opened the store at 7 as usual, helped Mr. Thompson pick out tomato stakes for his fall garden, rang up 3 cans of exterior paint for Mrs. Ellis, listened to Tim complain about his algebra homework while we restocked the nail bins. But my thoughts were elsewhere, on Elm Street, on that modest ranch house, on whatever something waited behind its walls. When the clock finally hit 3:30, I told Tim I had a family errand, locked the front door early for once, and drove straight to Mark and Lily's place. I parked a block away, not wanting to alert Mark if he happened to be home early. The street was quiet. Kids riding bikes, a woman walking her dog, leaves skittering across lawns in the breeze. I walked the rest of the way, hands in my pockets to keep them from shaking, and climbed the 3 steps to the porch. Before I could knock, the door opened. Lily stood there, eyes wide, relief flooding her face the moment she saw me. She didn't speak, just stepped aside and let me in, her fingers clutching the edge of the door so tightly that her knuckles turned white. I stepped inside, the familiar scent of the house hitting me all at once. Faint traces of coffee from the morning, the clean laundry smell of fabric softener, and underneath it all something sharper, almost metallic, like old coins or rust. The living room looked exactly as it always had. Same beige couch with the throw blanket Lily liked to wrap around herself during movie nights. Same coffee table cluttered with crayons and half-finished coloring books. Same framed photo of Emily holding baby Lily on the mantel. But the air felt heavier, thicker, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Lily closed the door behind me with a soft click and immediately grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the hallway that led to the kitchen and the garage beyond. Her grip was urgent, almost frantic, and she kept glancing over her shoulder toward the stairs that went up to the bedrooms, as if expecting Mark to appear at any second. "He's not home yet," she whispered, voice barely audible. "He comes back around 6, but sometimes earlier. We have to hurry." I let her lead me, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The hallway was narrow, lined with family photos. Emily and Mark on their wedding day, Lily's kindergarten portrait, a snapshot of the three of them at the county fair 2 summers ago, and each one seemed to watch us as we passed. Lily stopped at the door to the garage, which was slightly ajar, and pointed to a tall metal cabinet pushed against the far wall, the kind used for storing tools and seasonal decorations. A heavy padlock gleamed on the hasp, but even from here I could see it wasn't fully latched. "He never lets me near it," she said, voice trembling now. "But I watched him hide the key once." She crouched down beside a low shelf that held paint cans and old rags, reached underneath, and peeled away a strip of duct tape. A small brass key dropped into her palm. She held it out to me like an offering. "Please, Grandpa, open it. You have to see." My hands shook as I took the key. The lock clicked open with surprising ease, and when I pulled the doors apart, the contents spilled into view under the harsh fluorescent light overhead. Stacks of bank statements, some still in their envelopes, others unfolded and creased from handling. Travel receipts, Las Vegas hotels, Miami resorts, first-class flights to places I had never heard Mark mention. Jewelry receipts in the name of Claire Donovan, diamond earrings, a gold bracelet, a sapphire necklace that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and photographs, dozens of them loose and glossy. Mark and a dark-haired woman laughing on a sun-drenched beach, arms around each other. The same woman sipping champagne at what looked like a rooftop bar. Mark kissing her cheek under city lights. No receipts for roof repairs. No school supply invoices. No medical bills. Just luxury, indulgence, and lies. Lily stood beside me, staring at the evidence with the solemnity of someone who had already understood far too much. "He says the money is for me," she whispered, "but he buys nice things for his friend. And, Grandpa, sometimes I hear crying from the basement at night. Not loud, but like someone's trying not to be heard." The basement. Mark had always said the basement was just storage. Damp, unfinished, full of boxes and old furniture too broken to throw away, too dangerous for a child to play in. He had installed a new lock on the door years ago, claiming it was to keep Lily from falling down the steep stairs. I had never questioned it. Why would I? He was her father. He was supposed to protect her. I knelt so I was eye level with Lily. "Has anyone ever hurt you?" I asked, voice low, steady, though inside I was shaking. She shook her head quickly. "No. Daddy doesn't hit me. He just gets mad sometimes, yells, and he's always on the phone with her, Claire. He says she's his friend from work, but I saw them kissing once through the window when I was supposed to be asleep." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. "Grandpa, I don't want him to take more of your money. It makes him happy, but it makes Mom sad." The word Mom hit me like a physical blow. Lily had never called Emily Mom in front of me. Not since she was old enough to understand the word dead. She had pictures of Emily on her dresser, stories I told her, but she had stopped asking about her years ago, as though the absence had become too painful to name. I pulled her into a hug, feeling how small she still was, how fragile. "I'm going to fix this," I promised, though I had no idea yet how. "But I need you to be brave a little longer. Can you do that for me?" She nodded against my shoulder. "I already was brave. I told you." We closed the cabinet, retaped the key exactly where it had been, and slipped back into the hallway just as headlights swept across the front windows. Mark was home early. Lily froze. "He's not supposed to be here yet," she whispered, panic rising in her voice. I guided her toward the living room, sat her at the dining table with her notebook, and positioned myself near the front door so I could see him come in. The key turned in the lock. Mark stepped inside, jacket slung over one arm, briefcase in the other. He looked tired, lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered, but when he saw me standing there, his expression hardened instantly. "Jack," he said, voice flat, "didn't expect you today." "Lily asked me to come," I replied, keeping my tone even. "She wanted help with her history project." Mark glanced at Lily, who was bent over her notebook, scribbling furiously as though her life depended on it. "She's got it under control," he said. We're fine here. I didn't move. She also mentioned hearing noises at night. From the basement. His jaw tightened, just for a second, but I saw it. Old house. Pipes rattle. Nothing to worry about. He set his briefcase down with deliberate care. You should head home. It's getting late. I stayed where I was. Mark, if something's wrong. If Lily's scared, I need to know. She's my granddaughter. She's my daughter. He snapped, voice rising just enough to make Lily flinch. He caught himself, lowered it again. Look, Jack, I appreciate everything you've done. The money, the support. But we're managing. Really. I looked at Lily. She was staring at her paper, but tears were dripping onto the page, smudging the ink. That was enough. I'll be back tomorrow, I said quietly. And we're going to talk properly. About everything. Mark's eyes narrowed. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I left without another word, but the drive home felt endless. The lake road was dark now, headlights cutting through the night, and every shadow seemed to hide something sinister. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I sat in the truck for a long time, engine off, staring at the house where Emily had grown up, where Margaret and I had raised her, where everything had once made sense. That night I called Tom Riley, my old poker buddy, retired sheriff's deputy, the man who had taught me how to read people when the cards weren't showing everything. He answered on the second ring. Jack, it's late. Everything okay? No, I said. It's not. I need your help. I told him everything. Lily's whisper at the playground, the cabinet in the garage, the receipts, the photos, the crying from the basement. Tom listened without interrupting, the way he always did when something serious was unfolding. Meet me at the store tomorrow after closing, he said finally. Bring whatever you can remember from those receipts. Names, dates, amounts. And Jack, don't go back to that house alone. Not yet. The next day at the store passed in a blur. I helped customers, rang up sales, smiled when I had to, but my mind was elsewhere. When 6 o'clock came, I locked up, flipped the sign to closed, and waited for Tom. He arrived in his old pickup, same one he'd driven for 20 years, gray hair, military short, eyes sharp despite retirement. We sat in the back room, coffee cooling between us, and I laid out everything I could recall. Tom took notes in his small black notebook, the same one he'd carried on the job. When I finished, he leaned back, tapping his pen against the page. Claire Donovan, he repeated. I'll run her name tonight, see what comes up. But the basement, that's the part that worries me most. If Lily's hearing crying, and Mark's got that door locked like Fort Knox, there's something, or someone, down there he doesn't want found. I felt cold despite the warmth of the room. You think, Emily? Tom didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, steady and calm. I think we need to find out. Quietly, legally. No heroics. We made a plan. Wait for Mark to leave for work the next evening. Lily would be at a friend's sleepover. I'd make sure of it. Tom would bring tools, gloves, a flashlight. We'd go in through the side door to the basement if we could pick the lock. If not, we'd find another way. No confrontation. Just answers. The next 48 hours were agony. I kept Lily close when I could, took her for ice cream after school. Asked gentle questions she answered in fragments. She was scared, but she trusted me. That was enough to keep going. Wednesday evening came. Lily was at her friend Sarah's house for the night. Mark left for a late shift at the construction site. Tom had checked his schedule through an old contact. At 8:30, we parked 2 streets over, walked the rest of the way in darkness, and slipped around to the back of the house. The basement door was old, wooden, with a simple lock. Tom worked it with a tension wrench and a pick, movements practiced and silent. The lock gave after 30 seconds. We stepped inside. The air was damp, cool, smelling of concrete and mildew. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, but Tom didn't turn it on. He used his flashlight, sweeping the beam across boxes, old furniture, a washing machine that hadn't worked in years. At the far end, behind a partition of stacked crates, was another door, this one metal, newer, with a heavy deadbolt. Tom looked at me. I nodded. He picked that lock too. Slower this time. More careful. When the door swung open, the beam of light fell on a small, furnished room. A twin bed with rumpled sheets, a mini fridge humming quietly, books stacked on a card table, a laptop closed on a folding chair, and chained to a support beam with a long steel cable. Sitting on the edge of the bed was my daughter Emily. She was thinner than I remembered, pale, hair longer and darker, pulled back in a messy ponytail. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She looked up at the light, squinting, then froze when she saw my face. "Dad?" she whispered, voice cracking on the single syllable. The world tilted. I crossed the room in 3 strides, dropped to my knees in front of her, hands hovering, afraid to touch her in case she vanished like a dream. Tears burned my eyes. "Emily? Oh God, Emily." She reached out, fingers trembling, and touched my cheek. "It's really you." Tom stayed by the door, flashlight lowered, giving us space but watching everything. "We need to get you out of here," he said quietly. "Now." Emily shook her head, panic flashing across her face. "The chain, it's bolted to the beam, and he has cameras. He'll know." Tom moved to the bolt, examined it. "I can cut it, but we need to be fast." I held her hand, feeling how cold it was. "How long?" I asked, voice breaking. "How long have you been here?" 7 years, she said. 7 years, 2 months, and 12 days. The number landed like a physical weight. 7 years I had mourned her. 7 years I had sent money to the man who kept her prisoner. 7 years Lily had grown up without her mother. Tom pulled a small bolt cutter from his bag. "We do this now. Then we get you to safety. Then we deal with Mark." Emily looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "I thought you'd given up. I thought everyone had." "Never," I said. "Not for a second." The bolt cutter snapped through the chain. Emily stood, legs shaky, and I caught her before she fell. We moved toward the door, Tom leading with the flashlight. When we heard the sound, footsteps overhead, the creak of the main floorboards. Mark was home. The footsteps overhead were slow at first, deliberate, the kind of tread that belongs to a man coming home after a long day and expecting the house to be exactly as he left it. Then they paused, just for a second, directly above the spot where we stood frozen in the small hidden room. Emily's hand tightened around mine so hard I felt the bones shift under her skin. Her breathing turned shallow, rapid, the sound of someone who has spent years learning how to be silent when danger is near. Tom killed the flashlight instantly, plunging us into near-total darkness broken only by the faint blue glow from the mini-fridge and the thin line of light leaking under the metal door we had just come through. None of us moved. The footsteps resumed, heavier now, crossing the living room floor toward the kitchen. A cabinet door opened, muted clink of glass, the hiss of the refrigerator being opened, the pop of a beer can tab. Everyday sounds, normal sounds, but in that basement room they felt obscene, like a man enjoying his evening routine while his wife sat chained 10 feet below him. Emily pressed her forehead against my shoulder, body trembling, and I wrapped my arm around her as tightly as I dared, trying to anchor her to the present while my own mind spun backward through 7 years of grief, guilt, and blind trust. Tom touched my elbow lightly, signaling to stay quiet, then pointed toward the far corner of the room where a narrow ventilation grate sat high on the wall. He mouthed one word, "Wait." We waited. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours while Mark moved through the house above us. Water running in the sink, the low murmur of a television being turned on, the creak of the recliner as he sat down. Every sound was magnified in the silence we were forced to keep, every footfall a reminder that the man I had considered family for more than a decade was the architect of this nightmare. Finally, the television volume rose. A football game, crowd noise, announcer voices, and Tom judged it safe enough to speak in the barest whisper. "We can't stay here. If he comes down to check on her tonight, we're trapped. We need to move now, get her out, get to a safe place, then figure out next steps." Emily lifted her head, eyes glassy but focused. "He checks every night around 10, sometimes earlier if he's drinking. We have maybe an hour. Her voice was hoarse from disuse, but steady. She had survived 7 years in this room. She was not going to fall apart now that rescue was within reach. Tom nodded. Then we go now. Jack, you support her. I'll lead. Same way we came in. No noise. I helped Emily stand fully. Her legs were weak. Muscles atrophied from years of limited movement, but she forced them to work, leaning heavily on me as we moved toward the door. Tom went first, easing the metal door open inch by inch so the hinges wouldn't squeal. The outer basement was still dark, still empty. We crossed it quickly, Emily's bare feet silent on the cold concrete, my arm around her waist to keep her upright. When we reached the wooden exterior door, Tom paused, listening. No footsteps above us now, just the muffled roar of the game and occasional shouts from the crowd on TV. He turned the knob slowly. The door opened onto the backyard. Night air cool and clean, smelling of cut grass and distant lake water. We stepped out into darkness, closing the door behind us with the softest possible click. Emily paused on the grass, head tilted back, breathing deeply for the first time in years without the damp, stale smell of captivity in her lungs. Tears slid down her cheeks, but she didn't make a sound. We moved along the side of the house, keeping low, using the shadows of the hedges and the neighbor's fence for cover. Tom's truck was still parked 2 streets over. We reached it without incident, helped Emily into the back seat. She curled up immediately under the blanket Tom kept there, and drove away slowly, headlights off until we turned the corner. No one spoke for the first 10 minutes. Emily stared out the window at the passing houses, at the streetlights reflecting off Miller's Lake in the distance, at the normal, quiet life she had been excluded from for so long. When she finally spoke, her voice was small but clear. He told me you all believed I was dead, that there was a funeral, that Lily grew up thinking I was gone forever. He showed me pictures sometimes, her birthdays, her first day of school. He said it was kinder this way, that if I ever tried to leave, the police would arrest me for what happened on the boat, that I'd go to prison and Lily would lose both parents. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. What happened on the boat, Em? She swallowed hard. We argued. He wanted to leave Willow Creek, move somewhere bigger, start over with someone else. I said no. I wanted to stay near you, near the lake, near the life we had. He got angry, really angry, said I was holding him back. Then he handed me a drink. I didn't think anything of it. Next thing I remember, I woke up in the trunk of his car, wrists tied, mouth taped. He drove me to the house, carried me down here, bolted the chain, told me Emily Harper was dead and I was going to stay dead if I wanted Lily to be safe. Tom's voice came from the passenger seat, calm but edged with steel. He staged the whole thing. Capsized boat, life jacket washing up, search teams dragging the lake. Paid off a contact in the coroner's office to sign off on a body that was never recovered. Collected the life insurance. And took your money every year on top of it. Emily nodded slowly. I didn't know about the money. Not at first. Later he started bragging, said your checks paid for the house upgrades, the trips, Claire's jewelry. He said you were so broken you'd never question it. That grief made you blind. The words cut deeper than any knife. 7 years of checks written in good faith. 7 years of believing I was honoring my daughter's memory by supporting her husband and child. 7 years of being played for a fool by the man I had welcomed into my family. We drove to Tom's house, a small ranch on the edge of town, far enough from Elm Street that Mark wouldn't think to look there immediately. Tom's wife, Linda, met us at the door without asking questions. She simply opened her arms and helped Emily inside, wrapped her in a blanket, sat her on the couch with a mug of hot tea. Emily drank slowly, hands shaking so badly that tea sloshed over the rim. Linda sat beside her, rubbing slow circles on her back, murmuring soft words I couldn't hear. Tom and I stood in the kitchen doorway watching. She's in shock, he said quietly. But she's strong. Stronger than most people would be after 7 years of that. I nodded, unable to speak past the knot in my throat. We gave her time. Time to breathe, time to cry, time to begin processing the impossible reality that she was free. When she finally looked up at me, eyes red but clear, she asked the question I had been dreading. "Where's Lily?" "With a friend tonight," I said. "Safe. She doesn't know yet." I didn't want to scare her until we had a plan. Emily's face crumpled. "She thinks I'm dead. All this time. She thinks I left her." "She never stopped loving you," I told her. "She keeps your picture by her bed. She talks about you when we're at the playground. She's going to be so happy to see you." Emily pressed both hands to her mouth, tears spilling over again. "I want to see her. I need to see her." "You will," Tom said firmly. "But first we have to make sure Mark can't hurt either of you ever again. That means evidence. Solid, admissible evidence. We need him to admit what he did on record." Emily looked between us, understanding dawning slowly. "You want me to go back?" "No," I said instantly. "You're never going back there." Tom held up a hand. "Not go back to stay. Just long enough to get him talking. We wire you legal in Ohio one-party consent. You confront him. Stay calm. Let him think you're still scared, still broken. He'll brag. He'll justify. He always has. And when he does, we'll have it all on tape. Then we call the authorities and end this." Emily stared at the floor for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet but steady. "He kept me there for 7 years. Told me I was a murderer because I argued with him on that boat. Let me believe Lily was better off without me. Let you mourn me while he spent your money on his girlfriend. If I can help put him away, if I can make sure he never hurts Lily or anyone else, then yes, I'll do it." Tom nodded once. "Then we plan carefully. Tomorrow we get the wire from a contact I still have on the force. We rehearse what you'll say. We position people nearby. The second he threatens you, or admits anything incriminating, we move in." I looked at my daughter, alive, fragile, but unbroken, and felt something shift inside me. Not just anger anymore. Not just grief. Something harder. Something unbreakable. We spent the rest of the night talking through logistics. Where to place the recording device. What phrases would trigger immediate intervention. How to get Emily safely in and out. How to protect Lily during the operation. By the time the sky began to lighten in the east, we had a plan. Not perfect, not risk-free, but solid enough to end 7 years of lies. Emily fell asleep on the couch around 4 a.m., wrapped in blankets, Linda sitting beside her holding her hand. Tom and I stepped out onto the back porch, coffee in hand, watching the first pale light touch the tops of the trees. "She's going to be okay," he said quietly. I looked at him. "She already is. She survived him. That's more than okay." Tom raised his mug in a small salute. "To survivors." I clinked mine against his. "To survivors." And somewhere in the distance, Miller's Lake lay quiet under the coming dawn, waiting for the day when the truth would finally surface, and the family it had taken would finally come home. Tom leaned forward on the kitchen table the next morning, sunlight slanting through the blinds and catching dust motes in the air, while Linda quietly made more coffee in the background. Emily sat across from him, still wrapped in the same blanket she had slept under, her hands folded tightly in her lap as though holding herself together. She had showered for the first time in years that morning. Linda had lent her fresh clothes, a simple gray sweatshirt and soft jeans, and though her hair was still damp and pulled back, she already looked less like a ghost and more like the woman I remembered. The plan we had sketched out in the small hours was now written in Tom's neat handwriting on a yellow legal pad between us. Times, positions, code words, contingencies. Every detail mattered because there would be only one chance to get this right. "You don't have to do this," I said again, voice low, because I needed to hear myself say it one more time. "We can find another way. Call the police now. Let them handle Mark with what we already know." Emily shook her head slowly, eyes steady on mine. "They'd need more than our word and a cut chain. He spent 7 years building a story. Clean records, a grieving widower, a daughter who never suspected anything. If we go in without ironclad proof, he'll talk his way out. He always has. I want him to say it himself. I want it recorded. I want Lily to grow up knowing the truth. not his version of it. Tom tapped the pad once. Then we do it tonight. Mark usually goes to the house around 7 after work. Claire meets him there twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tonight's Thursday. Perfect window. We position 2 unmarked cars a block away. Friends of mine still on the force who owe me favors. They'll monitor audio and move the second you give the word. You'll wear the wire here. He pointed to a spot just below her collarbone. Small, flesh-colored, picks up everything within 20 feet. Battery lasts 8 hours. You go in calm. Act like you're still afraid, still dependent. Ask questions. Let him fill the silence. He'll brag. He always does when he thinks he's in control. Emily nodded, but her fingers tightened until the knuckles whitened. What if he suspects something? What if he sees the wire? He won't, Tom said. We tape it under the sweatshirt, run the wire along the bra strap, standard placement. You keep your movements natural. If anything feels wrong, you say the safe word, sunset. It's something you used to say to Lily when she was little. Watch the sunset with mommy. Natural enough in conversation, unmistakable to us. The second we hear it, we're through the door in under 30 seconds. I looked at her. You can walk away right now. No scham. No failure. You've already won by surviving. She met my gaze and held it. I survived for Lily. Now I fight for her. For us. For the 7 years he stole. Linda set fresh mugs in front of us, squeezed Emily's shoulder gently, and left the room without a word. Tom slid a small black device across the table. The wire itself, no bigger than a quarter, matte black with a tiny microphone grill. Emily picked it up, turned it over in her fingers, then looked at me. Help me put it on? We went into the guest bedroom. Linda had laid out a plain t-shirt and a light cardigan. I stepped outside while Emily changed, then came back in when she called. She lifted the hem of the shirt just enough for me to see where the device needed to go. Taped securely against her skin, wire taped along the bra strap and down her side, ending in a small battery pack clipped inside the waistband of her jeans. I checked the connections twice, hands steady despite everything inside me screaming to stop this. When it was done, she pulled the cardigan over everything, smoothed it down, and looked at herself in the mirror. I look normal, she said quietly. You look like my daughter, I answered. Strong, brave, ready. We rehearsed for hours. Tom played Mark, gruff, dismissive, then arrogant when cornered. Emily practiced her lines. Calm questions, silences that invited confession, subtle pushes that would make him talk without realizing he was being led. Why did you need Dad's money if I was gone? What really happened on the boat? Claire's been coming here for years. Does she know everything? Each time she spoke the words, her voice grew steadier, the tremble fading until it was gone entirely. By late afternoon, she could say them without flinching. At 6:30, we drove her back to Elm Street. Tom's 2 contacts were already in position. One car at the end of the block, another around the corner. I stayed in Tom's truck a street over, wired into the same frequency they were monitoring, heart hammering so loud I thought it might drown out the transmission. Emily walked the last 100 yards alone, shoulders back, steps measured. She looked like any woman coming home after a long day, except she wasn't coming home. She was walking into a trap she herself had helped set. We heard the front door open through the feed. Footsteps. Mark's voice, surprised, then wary. You're early. Where've you been? Emily's reply was soft, almost submissive. I needed air. I walked around the lake. I missed it. A pause. The sound of a beer can being set down. You know you're not supposed to leave without telling me. I know.
I'm sorry.
I wanted to talk. About us. About Lily. About why you still need Grandpa's money if I'm supposed to be gone. Silence stretched. Then Mark laughed, short, sharp, without humor. You're asking questions now? After 7 years. I've had time to think, she said calmly. A lot of time. Another pause. The creak of the recliner as he Saturday. You want the truth? Fine. I'll give you the truth. The money's nice. Real nice. Pays for the life I actually want. Not the one you tried to trap me in. Claire and I have plans. Big plans. Your dad's checks were just gravy. Insurance was the main course, but the annual 50 grand? That bought freedom, vacations, jewelry, a future without you dragging me down. Emily's voice stayed even. And Lily? What about her? She's fine. She's got your old man wrapped around her finger. He'll keep paying even after we're gone. Or he won't. Doesn't matter. She's not my problem anymore. The words landed like blows. I gripped the edge of the dashboard so hard the plastic creaked. Tom's hand landed on my shoulder. Steady, grounding. Emily pushed gently. Claire's coming tonight, isn't she? You always have her over on Thursdays. Yeah, she'll be here soon. Why? I want to talk to both of you. Clear the air. Maybe I can come with you. Start over somewhere new. I don't have anything left here. Mark laughed again, this time longer, colder. You think we'd take you along? After everything? You're a loose end, Em. Always have been. The second you walked out that door, you'd run to Daddy or the cops. We can't have that. Then what? Her voice trembled just enough. Perfectly calculated. What happens to me? A long silence. Then Mark's voice dropped, almost gentle. We make sure you don't talk. Ever. That was it. The line crossed. Tom's radio crackled. All units move in. Now. We heard the front door crash open. Boots on hardwood. Shouts of police. Hands where we can see them. And then chaos. Mark yelling. Furniture scraping. Claire's sharp scream cut off mid-breath. Through the feed we caught fragments. Cuffs clicking, Mark cursing. Claire trying to talk her way out in that cool, practiced voice she used on the phone. Then Emily's voice, clear and steady over the noise. It's over. You don't get to win this time. The arrest happened fast. Mark and Claire were taken into custody within minutes. Fraud, kidnapping, false imprisonment, conspiracy to commit murder, a dozen other charges that would keep them locked away for decades. The wire recording was crystal clear, every word admissible. The chain still attached to the beam in the basement. The hidden room, the receipts, the photos. All of it corroborated Emily's story and buried Mark's lies forever. Lily was brought to Tom's house that night under police escort. When Emily walked into the living room, wrapped in a blanket, hair still damp from another shower, Lily froze in the doorway. For a long moment neither moved. Then Lily whispered, "Mommy?" and ran. Emily dropped to her knees and caught her daughter in arms that had ached to hold her for 7 years. They cried together ugly, wrenching sobs that held every lost birthday, every missed bedtime story, every night Lily had whispered goodnight to a photograph. I stood in the doorway watching, tears streaming down my face, knowing I would never again take a single moment of family for granted. The trial came 6 months later. Mark and Claire were convicted on all counts, 25 years for him, 18 for her, no parole. Restitution was ordered. Every dollar I had sent, plus damages for emotional distress and wrongful imprisonment. Most of it would never be recovered, they had spent it, but enough came through to set up trusts for Lily's future and help Emily start over. She moved into a small apartment near my house, worked part-time at the hardware store while taking classes online, slowly rebuilding the life that had been stolen from her. Therapy helped, both of them. Lily still had nightmares sometimes, but she also had her mother's arms around her every night now. And every Saturday we went back to the playground behind Miller's Lake. The three of us sitting on the same bench, eating vanilla soft serve and rainbow sherbet, talking about everything and nothing. Sometimes the deepest betrayals hide behind the people we trust most. But truth has a way of surfacing when a child finds the courage to speak, and a grandfather refuses to look away. Family isn't just blood. It's the choice to keep searching, even when the world tells you to stop. Healing doesn't erase the scars, but it turns them into proof we survived. And real love, real, stubborn, unshakable love always finds its way home.